Hi, I'm Peter Rowlett.
And I'm Katie Steckles. And Peter, what is today's mathematical object?
Well, today you and I have both been sent a set of shiny gold stickers which say on them Certified Mathematical Object. And the person who sent those stickers is Chris, who's joining us now.
Hello, my name is Chris Nho. I live here in San Diego, California. Today I'm probably talking to you from my role as creative director of public math, which is who funded these stickers. But for my day job, I work as the director of community partnerships for the Math Happens Foundation. And that's just starting in January this year, so it's a relatively new role.
Okay, I mean, these stickers are genuinely one of the coolest things I've ever had. This is such a great sticker. And it's like a proper foil. It's like like a seal that you would get on an official thing that's got like a spiky edge around it. It's got embossed writing. It's so lovely. And they're just fantastic stickers. Why? Why do these exist? This is so great.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the origins of this. Back in last year when MoMath, the Museum of Math, was moving locations, I saw that they put a call for proposals out for they have sort of this art exhibit gallery. And I don't know, it was probably an influence of what I was reading at the time, but I had this idea, and it was called 10 Mathematical Objects. And the premise was going to be that we were going to put 10 objects in that gallery with zero context as to why they were put in that gallery, but we were going to call the exhibit 10 Mathematical Objects, and it's being hosted at the Museum of Mathematics. And so it was going to kind of put on the audience this question of like, wait, why these objects? And do I agree? And do I disagree? And all of this is influenced by Marcel Duchamp, who was a early Dadaist. Marcel Duchamp in 1913, he made this famous piece of artwork. Maybe you've seen it. It's called Bicycle Wheel. And it's a bicycle wheel and the fork of a bicycle wheel kind of attached to a stool. It really doesn't make any sense. Like, I suppose you could spin it. And that was in 1913. Mixed reviews when he said, this is my piece of artwork. And now it sits in the MoMA as part of the permanent collection.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that might have been early on in the point where people were willing to consider things that were not kind of paintings and sculptures as being art, right? That, I mean, not that that isn't a sculpture, obviously it is in some sense a sculpture, but it's kind of playing with the idea of what we call art, I guess.
Yeah, all those questions associated with, well, now what? Now that this thing has been designated this, what do you do? And so here, I actually wrote down a quote from Duchamp that probably is easy to draw the parallels to what we're trying to do here with the sticker, which is Duchamp said an original object could be elevated to the dignity of a work of art by the mere choice of an artist. And so the proposal, unfortunately, got rejected from this exhibit. But I didn't let this idea stop there and thought, well, okay, how could we... what could replace the Museum of Math declaring something as a mathematical object? And so I did a lot of research into what these official seals tend to look like. I'm glad that comes across in the embossing and the spiky edge. But yeah, this sticker says official seal at the top, and in the middle says certified mathematical object. And it's meant, I think we made 250 of these. So you could think of that as 250 opportunities for people to look at objects around their lives and decide, well, where should I put this on?
Yeah, and I guess that's like, because I guess if the object for this podcast, for the purposes of the podcast, is the sticker, it represents something quite fundamental, because a lot of the time as a person who tries to promote maths and get people interested in maths, I'm always saying, there's maths behind all these things. And there's a lot of things that that kind of have mathematics behind them that isn't necessarily apparent. And the idea of having a sticker that lets you kind of put that in, make it more visible and make it a question that people would then ask, like, oh, why? How is this mathematical? Like that, I think is a nice, it sort of shortcuts that in some ways, but also like there's almost certainly anything you could find some mathematical idea behind. I realize that's a controversial statement. We'll maybe get into that, I guess. But the sticker is kind of like a very visible way of kind of making that statement, I guess.
Yeah, and I take myself seriously and not seriously at all. So definitely both of those things are true of this project. Okay, so I mailed these to you and I'm wondering if you've placed this sticker on anything so far.
Well, that's a good question. Have you stuck it on anything yet, Peter?
I have not. I have placed it on my desk, and that's as far as I've got.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, the main thing that I would like to stick it on is something that has a flat surface. And I say this because I've seen a video that Chris has done where you stick it on a tangerine. And like that, for me, that is an incredibly mathematical object, because I literally have a stage bit that I do that takes 15 minutes where I just peel a tangerine and I talk about the Euler spiral and the the really interesting kind of geometry of spheres and all of that kind of stuff, and how you get interesting shapes out of it. So for me, that is an object that is really very much an everyday thing that actually people don't realize has maths in it, but it's really hard to stick a flat sticker onto a sphere. So anything with zero Gaussian curvature, I'd be up for sticking this on.
What I hear you saying is I need to make like a pin or something you could just like cork into a tangerine.
Yeah. Yeah, or do we like spray paint it on?
Right,
so,
stencil.
There's like a stencil or something.
So it's interesting. I think I mailed you all maybe around like 20 or something. And to friends of mine, I've just mailed 5. Like here is this little project, blah, blah, blah. And one friend, Molly, she's like, it's too, I haven't placed them on anything because they're too precious. Like, I think it's the gold foil, and, this is not real gold or anything. But the weight of, now you're officially designating something as a mathematical object. I think despite how not serious this project is, it does something. It's almost like, okay, now you're making this declaration that's bigger than just saying math is everywhere. You're saying, no, this math, like, I have to be able to defend this, or I see something in this that's mathy, but it's actually a step beyond that. And I think it's weird because it creates some sort of, it has created, to my surprise, some kind of pressure to like really make sure you have the object well thought of before placing the sticker on it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what objects I have, and like maybe that I can see in the room around me that I would think of as being like a strongly mathematical thing. And I think, annoyingly, it's another thing that is going to be really deeply impractical to stick a sticker on. But a pair of scissors, for me, I use so often. Like, I've done so many different bits of kind of talking about maths that involve either cutting paper or folding and cutting paper, like making a Mobius band and cutting in half. That's sort of something that's really intrinsically mathematical for me. So the pair of scissors is very much a character in my kind of mathematical exposition. But again, really hard to stick the sticker on. It's like 3 or 4 centimeters across the sticker. It's great.
You need a bigger pair of scissors, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, just one of the ceremonial pairs they use to open buildings.
Okay, so that's interesting with the scissors, because so if I asked why is it a mathematical object to you, is it because of what you do with the scissors? Or let's say with no context, Peter, you were presented with Katie's scissors with somehow the sticker affixed to it. What would you think is the reason she put that sticker on there?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I'm thinking of it as what is the maths in the design of the object or inherently in the object. But you're right, it would be for cutting up things to make Mobius strips or something like this. It would be, doing something mathematical with it, I guess.
Partly I'm thinking about objects that we've done episodes of this podcast about, because theoretically any of those should be something you could stick the sticker on, except for the ones that are obviously abstract concepts that you can't actually stick
those
the sticker
you just throw and
but,
see where it lands.
Yeah, you just imagine the sticker stuck to a shape that's 4-dimensional.
I vaguely remember a project when I was earlier in my career. It was the days when, do you remember the Intel Inside stickers that you used to get on computers? The sort of, please advertise Intel for me with your new computer. And there was some like science exhibition, I want to say, Royal Society or something, one of these. And there was a project that would go around all the exhibits at the science exhibition. And it was like maths inside, and it would kind of identify this as, look, you've got some maths here. And kind of, I think, work with the people who were doing the stall to work out what...
You would hope, right?
I think so. Yeah, I don't remember. I wasn't directly involved with it, but I remember it happening. And but I quite like that, because there is this thing that, I did a talk last year at a sort of public event about maths and sustainability and the different ways in which mathematics and modelling and things are used to address sustainability problems. And one of the fellow speakers, because I'm sort of claiming quite a lot of things as being maths that are perhaps in application areas and things like this, one of the other speakers said to me, he said, the problem with a lot of disciplines is that if they normalize kind of using a mathematical thing, they then kind of trap it in a black box. They make a procedure or they make a formula or something like that, and then they forget that it ever came from maths in the first place. So there's a lot of hidden maths inside other disciplines that isn't coming out. And I think that's what this Maths Inside project was trying to do. Because if you just go up to someone at a science stall and say, where's the maths in what you're doing? And they say, oh, no, there's none of that. It's all biology or something. But often there is.
Yeah.
And yet the people who are using it aren't necessarily aware of it because it's been embodied in a piece of software they use or something like this, that it needs drawing out for them. And that's what kind of that, it reminded me of that a little bit, that you might be able to identify things as being, look, there is some hidden maths here, rather than sticking it to your calculator or something that's really like obvious.
Right. That's what I found is folks, there are mathematical objects that are very apparent in people's lives. And often there are things we've seen in school. There's things that are like really associated with mathematics that then, it would be hard. You don't really need to do any additional declaring of what this kind of object is. And people tend to, I think the fun in this sticker is trying to find the things that are more everyday or, further away from perceived mathematics to try and like hint at that there's something here. Scissors being a good example. But then a question sort of like that the three of us have what seems to be a pretty inclusive definition of what would count. But is there anything we wouldn't put it on?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who often people come and say, "Oh, can you tell us about the maths of something?" And like occasionally Peter and me have mooted the idea of doing a live mathematical objects podcast. I think we maybe did one at Maths Jam one year, or we did something like this. But it's something that I've thought about pitching to science festivals. As like we would sit on the stage and people could literally almost Antiques Roadshow style just bring us an object, and we would have to come up with something to say about it. And in that case, it almost becomes like an adversarial challenge.
Right. I'm going to bring
what's the least
mathematical object and stump you.
Yeah, and then like knowing like, oh look, someone would bring their knitting and be like, yeah, good luck, and we'd be like, right, here are all of the massive knitting things that like there's so many. But it I think it might surprise like I want to say the average person as though that's a thing, but like someone who isn't necessarily kind of fully mathematical in the way they approach the world, it might surprise people which things are mathematical and which things we're just like whatever. Almost it's like Sudoku, like. It's just numbers, right? Could be 9 different pictures of cats, and there's logic, there's kind of mathematical reasoning in there, but it's not maths for the reasons people think it is, which I guess is another aspect to it. That,
so it's Latin squares. It's very mathematical, but people will think it's mathematical because it's numbers.
Oh,
and that's not
interesting.
Not the reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So many tangents I'd like to go on. So one consequence of that is like we could potentially label every single object in our backgrounds with this sticker. Assuming it fits, like the door or the lamp, sort of a thing. If we could do that first, and then we could say why, or if we're making that assumption, then why? But I there's something about labeling or disciplines, like you were saying, Peter, of. Is there something helpful in drawing that boundary of saying, well, this is this, and other things are not this? I'm curious, like, as your experience as mathematicians and people who do a lot of math outreach, like, I maybe our bias is towards saying, yeah, like, let's bring in everyone to the table, right? But are there times where it's helpful to say, well, actually, this is quite far away from mathematics?
Yeah, I guess there is a sense in which, as much as maths is everywhere, is like the really positive message, at the same time, it sort of doesn't help, because if someone's not interested in maths, them hearing that, they're like, oh God, it's everywhere. Like, well, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. And like, that kind of what's better, I guess, is to be selective and actually use it to showcase the ways in which maths makes the world a better place and the ways in which maths is useful and interesting and beautiful. And that, you know, if you just stick it on everything, then you've kind of stuck it on nothing in some sense. And, you know, there'll be some people who would actively be put off by this, oh, everything around you is mathematical, because they obviously know that that can't be necessarily completely true, and that for some of these things you're really going to be reaching to find a connection to maths. But is it better to sort of specifically pull out the things where there is maths, and also it's unexpected maths, and it's interesting maths, and it's cool. You know, it's a really clever thing that someone's done that makes this work. So, you know, like a barcode. You know, people see barcodes and they're like, oh, you know, it's just a thing that you scan. But then actually there's interesting aspects to like the way that it interprets the pattern of lines to get numbers, and then the number itself has got check digits built into it, and, you know, the systems that they use to kind of develop and distribute the barcodes are interesting. And like you know, there's a lot there in a way that for something where you're just like, I'm going to try and find some way that maths is connected, you might not actually find anything that satisfying, and that might put people off in some sense.
Yeah, and sometimes it comes across as being a bit tangential, because there are two edges to the problem, I think, that I would identify. And one is when you say, I don't know, Sanskrit poetry, and you say, aha, yes, I can tell you a thing about rhyming patterns. And the person who's listening might say, yes, but that's the least interesting thing about the Sanskrit poetry. Right?
Yeah, what does the poem actually say?
What is the poem telling us about the human condition? That might be the less mathematical. So you end up kind of claiming a thing to be maths, but then showing that you have, or appearing to show that you haven't really understood what the thing is, because you haven't grasped the deep human connection of it. And then at the other end, there are things that I think a lot of people, non-mathematicians, would identify that I would potentially not. There are sometimes things where people say, there's maths in this, right? And I'm like, no, there is a very basic calculation, and that's not enough for me to make this a necessarily a very mathematical thing. Or just because there's numbers there, like we said, doesn't mean that I want to claim as necessarily mathematical. I want it to be doing something more than that. So probably there's a window that I would put slightly differently than whoever this average person is that Katie's.
Is it the mean average? I don't know.
I will say the average person deserves a sticker to be placed on them when they come up to your show. I think that those two ends of the spectrum are really interesting. Friends of mine that I've given this out to, just, you know, local friends who are not connected to the math scene at all, they go, oh yeah, I get it. And then the first thing that they see with numbers on it, like, that's what they want to put the sticker on. And obviously, I'm not there to say no, right? But I think if you press on why, it's exactly the answer is, well, because my definition of math is numbers, and so boom. Or anything that's a peculiar shape. They, like, without really explaining what it is, it's like, well, I don't know, geometry, right? And it's boom, you know, gets the sticker.
Yeah, it's the classic one that like a lot of like decor companies that want to make like a fun object to put on a shelf or whatever, they'll do like an icosahedron or a dodecahedron or something like that, and then they'll call it, and I've seen this several times, they'll call it a geoball.
I've never seen that.
This is a shape with a name. What are you doing? It's got a name. Like, just call it that. But then when they actually try and call it that, they just put hexagon for everything. Like, we've seen so many things called a hexagon that are not actually a hexagon.
Like hexagon lampshade, and it's a dodecahedron or something.
Yeah. I need to see that
But
episode.
then, you know, like if like if you people talk about a geometric design, and if someone says, oh, it's geometric, I'm like, oh really? Get my compass and ruler. Like, I'm gonna, you know, like I'm really interested to hear about the geometry, and they're just like, oh no, I just mean shapes. It's got lots of straight lines and angles. Like, it's made of shapes. Like, everything's made of shapes. Everything's made of chemicals, and everything's made of shapes. All right,
yeah. Well, so I think.
And everything's numbers, I guess, in the sense that you can count it.
True.
So, you know, it's...
And it's a nuanced thing, I think, for, like, doing math outreach work to not... You want to honor what everyone thinks about mathematics, and everyone's lead-in point is different, and the ramps they're different, varying steepnesses. But I think, like, the ultimate work, I think, is getting past some of the, this is what I learned in school about math, and oh, that extends beyond school. Like, what I've learned about school math exists outside of school is not 100% what the goal of, our public math project is really about. It's like getting a deeper appreciation for the mathematics of your everyday life, and the sort of things that are at the heart of the discipline that can then become poetry, appear in poetry, but is not why we find poetry interesting, for example.
I think to some extent it's a problem of emphasis. Because if you've got someone whose impression is that maths is just arithmetic, right? That's the two things they just conflate entirely. Like the way I sometimes try and tease that apart is to say that, like, yes, arithmetic is important and it's obviously part of mathematics, and people who do maths end up doing a lot of arithmetic. But for me, it's like the equivalent of spelling. Like, if you're good at spelling, it's going to make writing a lot easier. It's going to mean you can do it more quickly. You won't need to use a computer to check that you've done it right. And in that sense, it's very much the same idea, because computers can check your maths in the same way they can check your spelling. But, like, it's not the whole picture. And when you say that, some people find that really useful as a way of thinking, like, actually, I arithmetic is something that I have mastered, but there's actually a whole layer beyond that they can appreciate the difference between spelling and writing in the sort of language sense. And I guess I'm not sure exactly how it translates to maths, but the idea that you can do so much more using numerical structures and using, the same kinds of structures that sit underneath arithmetic, give you abstract algebra and give you all these other things. And you can use it to do things like geometry and modeling and, all of the other stuff. So
I'm remembering that I think it's probably a Marcus de Soto thing, but people used to talk about like Shakespeare. Like, when you're in school, you're learning how to spell, but you can also go and watch a Shakespeare play. So you can sort of see that it eventually goes somewhere that's much grander than what you're necessarily experiencing in school. And like, what's the mathematical equivalent to that is a question that I used to hear people asking. But I don't know if there's ever been a great answer for that.
Yeah, oof.
Yeah.
I'm not about to follow this up by saying that this object is the answer to that, but just to go back to the object for a second, and the thing Katie said earlier, like in the example, in the hypothetical where this is plastered on everything and you're an outsider coming into this room, that's like one intention of this object is that you leave it somewhere or you put it on a thing that other people see. But another intention is that you're someone who has been somehow given this sticker, and it's now your decision to put it on. It's on you to put it on something. And I think back to the origins of this sticker and who Duchamp was, if you stumble into a museum of modern art and you see something that you don't understand, I think a lot of people's, whether they like it or not, a lot of people's first gut reaction will be on them. Like, they'll put the pressure on themselves to understand it, because the Museum of Modern Art has declared that this thing belongs here. So what am I not understanding about this piece that I need to understand? Now, people might outright reject it and say, that's why I don't like modern art, right? But I think that could also come from this, like, place of, because I've had so many experiences where I've never understood it and no one's been there to, walk me through the context here, that I feel this way. And I think with art and institutions, it's oftentimes like that. You're the receiver or you're the recipient. They're hosting the space. You have to pay to enter that space. But the sticker is an opportunity for you to be the curator. And it's a chance for you to feel maybe like, wait, this is a little strange how I have the ability to declare something this or not. Is there anything really that different about what the professionals or the people who get paid to do this at a bigger level are doing? Or does something like Bicycle Wheel and something like this sticker suddenly become this excuse to declare something as valuable to a discipline? And I think I'm hoping that those sort of questions enter into people's mind.
Yeah, I like the idea that in the same way that, like, the definition of what people would categorize as art has changed, like that the idea that things that people didn't used to think of as being maths are now part of maths. And I mean, like, if you go back far enough, everything was just the natural sciences, just like studying, the universe, and everyone just did everything. And then it was only when people started to specialize into specific subjects that the idea of maths as a concept was sort of separated out from everything else. But a lot of early maths was astronomy, and it was optics, and it was, finance, and all of these kind of things were just sort of all mashed together. But yeah, that kind of, I know what you mean. Like, you go into an art thing and you're like, I don't see why this is art. Maybe that's just because I'm not seeing it in the right way. But there is this sort of idea that art is anything that makes you feel something, right? Like my favorite example is the Yves Klein did a whole series of paintings where he just picked a particular shade of blue, and he was like, this is now called International Klein Blue. This is my blue that I've picked. It's like a particular Pantone shade. I'm acutely aware that my nail varnish is now currently that exact colour, which I realise the listeners are not enjoying. But if you look up Yves Klein International Klein Blue, that's the colour that my nails currently are. And the art was literally just a canvas that he painted this shade of blue. And you can just go and stand in front of it and just fully be absorbed in this colour. And I don't know if it's anything particular about that shade of blue, but it's really kind of... there's a lot, it's like a evocative as a colour, but just the idea that he's picked this colour and that's a piece of art in itself, like, again, was pushing the boundaries of what we consider to be art. But that for me sort of was a meaningful thing, and I was like, that's kind of cool that this guy has picked this colour and it's his colour now and he's named it after himself, like that. And that itself was the artwork, rather than the fact that he's painted it and the skill of actually painting. And I wonder if, like, people conflating maths with arithmetic is like people conflating art with being
technical
good at
drawing,
right? Because it's and like drawing an accurate picture of something that looks like the thing, which has not been the goal of art for a very long time, although it obviously still is a really useful skill, and it's an important skill and a thing to respect. But there's something more to art that I think adds to that in a lot of ways, that you can have an artistic, realistic drawing, but it can also be clever in lots of other ways. This is so deep. We've gone really deep.
The designating of something as...
It's a sticker.
Sorry. I think the designating of something of art, nowadays, you have to ask yourself, like, well, what was the process and what was the context of this thing, right? And I think with mathematical objects, oftentimes it's just, what's it look like? Or what is its current state? And there's something, I think, beautiful about what mathematics is, of like, how if something is logically true in this year, it'll be logically true for the rest of time. Like, it will never, once proven, it can never really be disproven. And maybe that puts an emphasis on sort of this, like, the end result is sort of like, this beautiful proof kind of idea. But I think that mathematicians are really invested in the journey that it took to get there, and really investigated in, like, well, what questions were we asking, and what was known about mathematics at the time. And those are the stories, at least, that hook people into wanting to explore more math, right? It's not well, it's both, right? It's like, I saw a beautiful thing, but wow, when I really came to understand what it was, it's human.
Well, I think also, like the Yves Klein painting that's just a blue rectangle without the little sign next to it that explains what's happened here is just a blue rectangle, right? And like, for me, reading that and understanding that context and looking this up and reading about it elsewhere and finding out about this project made it into a thing for me. And I wonder if it's the same as like my pair of scissors, that without the context of what you can do with that has a mathematical kind of elegance to it, if I'm allowed to use that word about the math stuff I do with a pair of scissors. But the underlying stuff isn't necessarily evident from just looking at the object itself.
And the fact that they're Katie Steckles scissors and they're not just a random pair of scissors.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
But yeah, maybe this is why the sticker is useful, because it makes you ask those questions, like, what is it about this that makes it art or makes it maths?
So a conversation I have a lot with a former colleague, Annie Perkins, of the Math Art Challenge, is about, it's like, what is math art, right? We both like art, and we're talking a lot about art, which is, I think, fine. But it's like, what's math art? Or when is it not just art? Or when is it not just math? And when is it both? And Annie, I asked her permission to paraphrase her perspective on these things, which is, Annie sort of has told me that she's come to the conclusion that it's really in the eye of the beholder, or the eye of the person doing it at the time of like, am I thinking of it as math art or am I seeing it as math art? And that moment decides whether it's math art, and it's not a universal thing. It's in that moment for that person sort of thing. I'm sure a lot of people see that blue color or have even seen that blue color outside of the context of a museum and have never, just walked right by it, right? And I think that's okay, and perhaps has to be the case a little bit of mathematics, art, and our perception of things, that we cannot like come up with a definition or come up with some kind of criteria that means like everyone must accept this as a mathematical object. Instead, it's like, well, what were you doing at the time that you saw this thing? Or like, where were you at?
Yeah.
And is that what triggers it to fall into one category or another?
I know what you mean, because I've definitely seen pieces of mathematical art, and I think it's almost like it adds to it in some sense, that it is a piece of art, but then, someone will come and stand next to you and go, oh, all of these regions have the same area, and you're like, oh, shit, that's really nice. Like that actually makes this a much more interesting object, just from knowing like an additional fact about it, or, that there's something mathematical underlying it. And I guess it adds to it in that sense. So like something that, in and of itself, you might stare at a blue canvas and be like, this is a nice color. Like, I'm enjoying staring at this blue canvas, but not know that sort of broader context. And like, the context just kind of adds to it, I guess. And unless you're the kind of person who looks at it and goes, this is terrible, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like if you've got enough patience to sit with it and kind of investigate more, like you can kind of build layers on it and get more context to it and make it more meaningful, I guess.
Yeah. So I think the silly sticker is meant to evoke these questions and really not like, I think what the proposal originally for MoMath was about and what this stickers is a way of doing is bringing these questions. Like my favorite experiences are ones that bring your own perspective into the conversation of, there's an artist here. Well, he actually passed away, but he was living in San Diego, named Robert Irwin, and has this beautiful piece at the San Diego Museum of Modern Contemporary Art, where it's like a window. It overlooks the beach, and the artwork is like the window that overlooks the beach has some cutout rectangle sections from it, so you can like smell the breeze, and you can smell the ocean air, and you can feel the breeze, and the part of what happens to you is like you're in this enclosed building the whole time, but you finally, when you enter that room, you're like, oh, wait, I'm like in San Diego, I'm by the beach, and it brings the outside in, and it kind of like awakens you to like the fact that you as someone there matter to the space, or like that you are experiencing something. And I think these stickers, especially the opportunity to walk around with them and think, where do I put this, is like, well, there's a back of the textbook understanding of mathematics, which is that everything is figured out and you must just learn it. You must receive all of that. But then there's this thing that can happen where you sort of wonder like what it means to be in the driver's seat of defining mathematics, and where do you see it in the world around you. I think that's the fun of it.
So that's great. That gives us an awful lot to think about and go away and ponder. Chris, could you tell us a bit about public math more generally and about yourself, where people can find you, things like that, please?
Yeah, if you're interested in getting in touch or talking more, or even, I can send some stickers your way, reach out. Public Math is a nonprofit that our mission is to put more math in more places and let everyone be a part of that conversation. Best way to probably reach out is on Blue Sky or Instagram. I am Noskee, Nhoskee. Those are from the breakdancing days, by the way. But yes, feel free to reach out to me there. Would love to chat.
That's great. Thanks. We're on Blue Sky and Mastodon and places like this. You can search either Peter Rollett or Katie Seckles. You'll find us.
Both of us blog at the website aperiodical.com, which is where you can find more episodes of this podcast.
And we're both members of the Finite Group, patreon.com/Finite Group, which is a place to hang out and have mathematical conversations, and members of the Finite Group got to listen in on recordings of this series.
And if you have any thoughts or want to get in touch with us, or if you have any suggestions for your own mathematical objects, if you have made a sticker, then you're welcome to get in touch. You can email objects@aperiodical.com.
The music is Funk Game Loop by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons.